Hey, Dan.
Hey, handsome.
I think we're getting
Are you,
in.
are you wearing a collared shirt today?
Yeah, but I still haven't shaved. I've been too busy to shave. It's
I'm sorry to hear that.
one step forward, one step back. I'm back to
Okay.
neutral.
Okay.
How
Well,
you doing?
neutral.
You look
Uh,
good. You
I'm doing great. I'm, serving customers and helping you and, just living large, buddy. I'm living large at the Jersey Shore.
well. Here's what I wanted to talk about today. Let's see if you're game for it.
Okay.
So, a lot of our customers, a lot of the people that watch our videos, they ask us about impacts on the market for all sorts of different segments. We've done videos about trucks, we've done videos about sedans, we've done videos across the board. One thing we haven't talked about is luxury cars. Some of
Mhm.
the names that we think of are Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, the Lexuses of the world, even
BMW, you've got to include BMW in there. They'd be pissed if you didn't.
BMWs, of course, as well, uh, and even Audi. I remember you worked at an Audi dealership, so we can throw Audi in there too.
Hmm.
Here's what I wanted to talk about. We've got a video, and I'll link it in the card on the screen. We've got a video where you break down factory to dealer incentives. We've got a video where you talk about how much money or how car dealers make money. We've got all these videos. Let's talk about how much profit are built into some of these luxury cars.
Sure.
I'm curious because I bought a used Volvo. I'm sure they made some money off me, and Volvos aren't anything close to a six-figure Mercedes Benz. So when you were selling cars, I mean, how much money could be built into just the MSRP if someone was willing to buy a car for
Well,
that?
it depends on the car, but I'm going to share a quick story with you from a friend of mine today. I'm not going to mention any names. I'll only mention brands.
Okay.
Okay. I'll mention a brand, a Mercedes-Benz G63 G-Wagon. Okay. Very expensive vehicle that has been in somewhat short supply, and dealers have been um, living large by, I don't know, charging extra on the cars, additional
Okay.
dealer markup. And typically on those vehicles, it's been somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 extra just for the privilege of buying it.
On
And
top of MSRP.
on top of MSRP. And I have a friend in the business. I won't say what state, I won't say anything along those lines, but I will tell you that he's a salesman, and he had a customer come in, and the customer said, "Hey, I don't want to play games. I'm going to make this real simple for you. I won't pay a penny more than MSRP." And the salesman said, "Well, I have to go check with my boss." And he goes and checks with his boss, and his boss says, "Well, see if you can get 5,000 over." And so the salesperson goes back and says, "I need 5,000 over MSRP." And the customer says, "I told you I'm not paying a penny more than MSRP." And then the salesman can't find his manager, so the customer leaves. And then eventually the manager says, "Well, what happened to your customer?" And he says, "Well, he left because he said he wouldn't pay a penny over MSRP." And so he left, and the sales manager screams at him, "What do you mean you let him leave? Why didn't you find me? Call him back, let him know we'll sell the car for MSRP." And the salesman said, "I might be a little mad at me for having let him go, but I'm madder at you for not saying, I don't know, if you can't get the 5,000 over, just take the MSRP."
Yeah.
So I asked my friend, I said, just out of curiosity, as my phone goes off for a change,
Hey,
just out of curiosity, what's the margin that is built into that car?
this is the
And he goes, "Well,
G63
so he
wagon.
goes, it's 12%. And I said, the MSRP said it was $147,000, which means that the gross profit was $17,000.
Wow.
Now, the question in my mind is, what kind of manager would turn a customer away who said, "I don't want to go through all the nonsense. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing this. I'll basically give you a $17,000 profit if you just sell me the car for MSRP." And the manager says no. What is wrong with that manager?
Yeah.
So that's a story for another day. But that's an example of the type of margins that can be built into some of these luxury cars.
Yeah.
Now, back in the day when I was with Acura, um, we would get an invoice for the cars, and the invoice would show what the cost was to the dealer, and then it would show what the MSRP was. And so there was like 6 or 8%, maybe 8% on the more expensive cars from invoice to MSRP. And then there were other areas that you could make money on the car. For instance, there's a thing people go, when you talk about holdback, what is holdback?
Yeah.
What holdback is it's additional margin that's built into the car, usually 2.5%, that gets paid quarterly after you sell the car.
Okay.
So if you work a car deal and you work it down to where, I used to always try to negotiate, instead of negotiating price, I would negotiate a percentage off.
Yeah.
So if I had 8% margin and I negotiated 4% off, I was still making 4% plus 2.5% 3 months after I sold the car.
Yeah.
You're waiting on that money. Now that money is different from any sales objective money that the manufacturer might place on the car
Yeah.
if you hit your sales objective.
Which are the monthly and quarterly
Yes,
volumes.
yes, and those are usually stair-step programs where it's X amount of dollars. It might be $250 per unit. If you get to 100%, it might be $500 per unit. If you get to 110%, it might be $750 per unit. If you get to 120+% of whatever your objective was.
Sure.
So those are other ways to make money. But the holdback was the big one that you hear people talk about. It's in the industry, it's what's known as under the line money,
Okay.
because every dealer in America at some point said, well, what if I showed you the invoice and we just agreed on a number above invoice?
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's great, except what we're not telling you is there's another 2.5% that we're going to get. Now, I would go into holdback in order to make a deal.
Really?
I didn't. Yeah, you got to make deals. I mean,
Yeah.
Some profit is better than no profit. So you do what you got to do to make a deal, to move the metal, as we would say.
I mean, a wise man once told me, you're a potato farmer and you need
Yes,
some small potatoes to fill your
yes,
bushel basket.
yes. I remember a wise man. I remember before I made the move from New Jersey to Arizona,
Yeah.
and I sent letters to dealerships out there before I
Okay.
made the move. And I said, a wise man once said, "Move west, young man." I said, but an even wiser man said, "Have a job to go to when you move west, young man." And the funniest thing is, this is true. This is a true story. The funniest thing is, after my golf store failed and I ended up in the car business, and one of the dealerships I ended up at,
Yeah.
they actually found my letter that I
Wow.
had sent 5 or 6 years earlier about needing to have a job when I moved west.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I ended up working for that group. It was really kind of funny.
And you know what? That's proof to everyone that's watching this. I mean, I've seen it for my 24 years of existence, but you haven't changed one bit. Your hair's thinner, but that's about
Yeah, there's a lot less of it, and my face is fuller.
it.
Okay.
So back to markup on these luxury cars.
Yes.
I mean, that G Wagon that we were talking about,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
$140,000 MSRP.
$147,000.
And again, what percentage was built into it?
12%.
Wow.
Yes.
So when we're talking about maybe, I know you had previously worked at an Audi dealership, and I was at a
Mhm.
period in my life where I was looking at maybe getting I think it was like the S5. I think it
Yes.
was, yeah. I
Yeah.
ended up not doing it. It's way too much money, but beautiful car, beautiful
Mhm.
car. I've
Yeah.
got to imagine what was there, if you had to ballpark it, actually you probably knew. I mean, how much margin is built into something like that?
Well,
I'm asking you to ballpark it. You were the sales manager. You knew the numbers.
it was like 8%, and then when you got into the A8,
Yeah.
maybe it was a 10%.
And that's why you say, I mean,
You get into the R8, you were around 12%.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's not like there isn't money built into it. The problem becomes is that everybody just discounts dramatically off of MSRP. So what's built in and what's actually attained are two different things.
it is interesting that, there's this MSRP number that has, I don't know, let's say on an A8, and
Yeah,
let's say it's 10%. I don't know what an
yeah.
A8's MSRP is right now, but it's
100,
probably,
grand.
yeah, it's probably close to
Yeah,
$100,000.
yeah,
So there's $10,000 of profit built into it that you're
yeah.
then going to have to sell away to close the deal to get to the monthly factory
Sales,
incentive
yes, so
to
that you
maybe
can,
get
yes,
$100,000.
yes, that is correct.
No wonder people say, you go to the car dealership and you're playing games. It's moving, money around. That's all it is.
At times, it's almost like three card Monty.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the truth of the matter is, I know most customers think that dealerships are just making thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars per new car sold,
Yeah.
when the reality is they're making hundreds and hundreds of dollars
Yeah.
per new car sold, not thousands of dollars. And you've heard me say it before that the vast majority of new car departments in new car franchise dealerships
Yeah.
lose money.
Yep.
Okay, the new car department is not a profit center. The used car department tends to be a profit center. Finance and insurance tends to be a profit center. Parts and service tend to be profit centers.
Yep.
New car departments are a drain. But the reason the dealers are okay with the fact that that's a drain is because depending on their volume, they're creating 100, 200 new customers for their finance and insurance departments
Yep.
and their parts and service departments on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So that's
And,
why it makes sense.
and we have that other video that I filmed at that condo that you're sitting in, but it's nice and it's with the mic and 4K and whatnot, where you break
Yeah.
down how dealerships make money. And we even have a written guide on the yourautoadvocate.com website, where we write it out, talking about service absorption and how that, that plays a huge role. And that's something that dealer principals look for,
Mhm.
is, the service absorption rate within a dealership. But I guess just to maybe put a bow on this, we're talking 8, 10, 12% margin built into MSRP prices on these luxury vehicles.
Mhm.
On the economic, the more economic uh, economy class cars,
Yes.
we're looking at 2%, 3%,
Could be
4%.
2%, 3%. Yeah, absolutely.
So then I guess the final question I have for you is, and I know you were primarily on the new car side during most of your career, but on the used car side of these luxury vehicles, do dealers then try and retain some sort of, like 10% rule on a Mercedes, or are they just marking it up kind of arbitrarily? Or everyone says it's the market-based price, but I guess I wonder how much margin you think is maybe there.
It depends.
Yeah,
Everything depends on what they own the car for.
sure.
So if they were fortunate enough, or from the customer's perspective, the customer was unfortunate enough to allow the dealership to trade their car for too little money.
Yeah,
Okay. And it turned out that it didn't need a lot of reconditioning. And what most people don't realize is that when a dealership trades a car
yeah,
and they're going to retail it on their lot, average reconditioning costs are between $1,500 and $1,800 a car.
really?
Okay. Yes. So when you see in our comments, people go, well, you should just buy private party. Well, one of the reasons that private parties can afford to sell them for less than a dealership can is because they're not doing the maintenance. They're not doing any of the reconditioning. They're not doing any of the safety work that the state might require be done prior to selling the car. So if the dealer can trade the car at a right number and the reconditioning isn't quite as expensive as it is on most cars on average, um, they might end up having $5, $6, $7,000 profit
Yeah,
built into the asking price. Okay. And in other cars, they might have $2,000, depending
for
upon how
sure.
long the car's been sitting there,
Yeah.
and depending upon what the market conditions are for a particular model.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
okay. I've got actually one more question for you. I feel like I'm pulling 20
Well,
questions.
well, well. I'll actually have just one more answer for you then. Mhm.
Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome.
Um, in your career,
Yes.
and don't give specifics or anything like that, but I mean, have you seen like the story you told at the beginning? I mean, does that happen? Like, do people? I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, do people get away with that making 20? I mean, because if this customer had paid over MSRP, even the 5,000, I mean, that's what? That's a $22,000 deal.
Well,
Does that happen?
think about uh, when the G63 G wagon was really hot, and people were paying $20,000 in additional dealer markup
Holy
just for the privilege of buying the car. So suddenly the dealer made what, $37,000 as opposed to $17,000.
And we did see this with like the new Corvette that came out as
Well,
well.
yes, but as I've told you many times, the problem with doing that
Yeah.
is that at a certain point, the customer realizes that all they did was pay an extra $20,000 for the privilege of buying something that's depreciating, and that at a certain point they're going to go, that wasn't worth the extra 20,000. I'll never do business with those people again. There are dealerships that absolutely refuse to charge more than MSRP, even on hot products.
I remember when the Corvette came out, there was an article in Automotive News about a dealership, a dealer principal who said,
Yeah,
we could, but we're not going to. We're going to charge
exactly. Yeah,
MSRP.
yeah. And because he was looking at the long-term
Yes.
health of his business as opposed to the short-term spike in profit he might see, but realizing that ultimately he'd be driving those customers away from
Yeah.
ever coming back to buy another car from him.
And you go back to that story that you shared from your friend who's working at Mercedes-Benz, and that manager lost the customer for life opportunity because of $5,000.
Not only did the manager lose a customer for a life opportunity, but the way managers get paid is they get a salary and a percentage
Yeah.
of gross profit for their department. So, if the percentage is 2.5 or 3% of gross profit, what did he lose just on that deal that he didn't make that could have ultimately ended up in his pocket?
Yeah.
Um, 3451 $510 to him.
Man, your car math skills are next level. Did you know that?
Well, yeah, but I can only do car math.
Yeah.
Okay, I can only do car math. Don't ask me what 2 and 2 is. I can't give you that answer. Okay, but I can do car math. I could probably calculate a lease in my head, which is probably why I'm not sleeping as well at night.
Put a comment down below if you want to see Ray Shepska, aka Rain Man, calculate a lease in his head.
That was one of my nicknames at a time. Rain Man. That's what they used to call me.
Really?
Yeah,
I learned something new every time we chat
yeah,
for one
yeah,
of these videos.
yeah, yeah. Wapner at 4. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Well, hopefully you found this information useful and valuable. Ray and I always get a kick out of sharing these insights. Okay, he shares the insights. I pose the questions.
Yeah, you listen.
I learn every single time. I really, really do.
I'm glad I can help.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I'm the one getting smarter thanks to you.
Oh, God, I hope so. I didn't mean that the way that came out.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, love you.